Hi. So it's February the 4th. Tomorrow, well, I guess it's almost a full moon. We pretty much have a full moon in Leo. Um, my idea for this video is to maybe follow up on some ideas that I was talking about in my last video because I sort of initiated a certain train of thought and I got the basic idea out there, although there were some threads that I hadn't quite tied up. And then in the meantime, since I made that video, I was watching some Adam Ellenboss videos and I kind of realized that there was this Uranus square and having, I've got the planet Uranus in my profile picture, and I should probably be more aware of the Uranus aspects if I'm going to go around, parading the image of Uranus around so much. But it's kind of been just the Uranus influence as somebody who has fixed sign placements has just been a kind of a background influence, and so I've it hasn't been as on the forefront of what to talk about. But I was kind of some of the themes that was coming up in Adam Ellenboss's video about the challenging whatever one of the things that I'm kind of tackling is the idea of the progressivism versus the conservatism, and but I was kind of leaning more in the conservative direction with my last video, which was called The Orthodoxy, and I was talking about this documentary called The Unorthodox about Israel and the kind of culture around partying and young people going to Israel, and also just kind of relating to it. I thought this was a movie that was a great film and resonant for a number of different reasons. And unfortunately, the whole point of it, though, is that if I look at my own ancestral, thing, I don't think I have much. Well, who knows? I'm not very Jewish, though. I would be more, but my family on my mom's side is of Eastern European descent, and the Russian Orthodox Church was apparently the strongest ancestral religious connection from my maternal lineage. And on my dad's side, it's a different story. My dad's birthday is coming up tomorrow. My dad passed away 10 years ago, and that's another thing is that I'm considering, should I just make, for a full moon video, should I just make a video talking about my dad who passed away? Because one of the difficulties is all of the grief that's associated with that, and anniversaries and birthdays. So I might do that video, or maybe I'll do that tomorrow even, right? But I don't know about if I want to use my personal, use my astrology channel for my own personal whatever, talking about grief and stuff like that, if that's what I mean. But I'm kind of encountering this sort of issue with it because it's sort of like, if you're in a position where you have whatever's going on in your life, that you can use as material to talk about an astrology channel, when it's just a lot of when with the social reality is just a lot of grief and depression and stuff like that. It's not doesn't really make for something you want to talk about, to be like, oh, I've got, I've, so but I mean, I think that the part of the problem with grief is that there's this kind of attitude of like not being able to say anything, not being able to talk about it, not being able to express yourself, and that negative emotions. There's this whole I'm kind of questioning this whole kind of thing about the restraint of expressing negativity, expressing grief, expressing negative emotions, because it seems like people make themselves sick by doing this, basically, right? And that I don't know about how much I'm filtering out versus how much I'm expressing online, or whether the question is like, by doing stuff like this, is this healthy for me, or is this not healthy? Am I stressing myself out by doing this, or is this giving me an outlet to express my emotions? However, it's not like I'm not expressing my emotions to a friend here who's there to support me. I'm expressing my emotions to a mirror that just mirrors my own image back at me, and then I get to see, like, whatever, just watch different internet celebrities talk and have weird people send me messages that I may not even want to talk to. You know what I mean? It's like the internet's weird weird. I'd rather just have a real, social life, real connection with real human beings. And I'm not really a fan of this situation that we find ourselves in. And the actual circumstance kind of creates a sort of creative pressure that needs to be expressed in some way, right? And so, I don't know, right? But I kind of feel like I'm getting a bit distracted. The main thing I wanted to talk about was following up on this thing about the Orthodoxy, and the thing about the Orthodoxy, certain threads that that didn't wrap up properly. The one thing is, okay, there's this thing in the end of the movie that is like, I find makes it all worth it, is that the young woman who's been going through this process, like one of the things about the Orthodox thing is the whole going through different periods of restriction, whether that there's like the women will spend a period of time not talking to men at all, and the men will spend periods of time not talking to women, and similar to the way that you would like spend a period of time also not being online, not being on the internet, or and abstaining from technology. And I don't think you have to be somebody who's when you're approaching something like the internet and the problems of internet use and whether that's healthy for mental health and all this kind of stuff, that I don't think that you can, whatever. A lot of people might make the argument to just delete your social media entirely and get away from social media and everything. And, but I kind of take there's also what you can do is also take breaks at least, right? Or not see it as being completely black and white, or that there's, one of the things that I liked hearing these Orthodox Jewish people talk about their different periods of abstaining or having things where they can't eat or something like that, where it'll be like that you're playing games with yourself as a way of conditioning yourself, or as a way of you're training yourself in a certain way. And it's not to say that, like, if somebody were to not to abstain from a certain thing for a while, it's not to say that like that thing is inherently evil, or that thing you can't have that thing entirely, but that you can use periods of abstinence or periods of discipline or something like that for their own kind of purpose, right? But look, I'm kind of getting distracted again. What the one thing I wanted to focus though on was at the end of it was that I guess she was talking about working with her rabbi or whoever her spiritual mentor was about this, and he was kind of saying that the point of it is that there's all these traditions and all these conventions and all these rules, but at the end of the day, the important thing that they're trying to communicate is this thing to do with truth. And I mean, it's kind of funny for me to talk about this as somebody who's not part of this tradition, but I still thought that the message came through really well, that I could appreciate the message was that there's a, whether you're aligning yourself with this tradition or not, is that true for you to do that? And that if you, like, is it, so in some way, I don't know. I have to admit that some of this is a bit, there's sort of the issue of multiculturalism and whether or not, but I mean, I'm not sure if I like this idea of being completely bound to being like, oh, I have this is my genetics, and because my genetics are a certain way, I'm bound to a very certain, cultural tradition, and that I can't be open to other people's views. But like, that's kind of silly, right? Because that's not really what anybody's saying, and that usually people are pretty welcoming into other traditions and stuff, and that's not really like, it's not really that much of an issue. But there's something about the ambiguousness about being each of these traditions. There's some kind of like, whether it's right for you to live your life that way, is that being true to who you are, right? And what you're doing in life, and that it's whether it is kind of like this thing that maybe you struggle with, but out of that struggle you get an idea of who. You could call it individuation if you want, but that it comes out of that in the sense that you're not trying to do anything that's not like artificial or not just natural to who you are and what you'd naturally be doing, and that you're putting yourself in harmony. Everybody says putting yourself in alignment is very new agey, right? And that there's something that it just even with all the difficulties, that part of it came through really clearly. But of course, the whole thing about truth, as they say, is the good, the beautiful, and the true being transcendental virtues, is that they're kind of hard to define, right? And it's kind of hard to define what truth exactly is. So in this sense, that I don't personally, I highly doubt that I would convert to Judaism and become an Orthodox Jew, specifically because even in this sort of situation, I can see that as being a great spiritual teaching, just from this woman and her teacher, and this message of finding herself in this question of whether it's true or not. That there's this whole thing though about like taking a scripture or a specific religious teaching to be the, this is the word of God, there's no question about it, and everything else isn't, or that all this kind of stuff. There's something about taking the scripture at face value literally and all this kind of stuff that is just kind of, I have to let it sit more loosely than to be that devoted to any specific tradition at this point anyways. So I don't want to like give that impression anyways. But I thought I would finish that off as that that in the end there's a kind of a refining process towards truth. And of course, there's something I have to say too about, because I'm just watch these Adam Ellenboss videos, and I don't know if he watches my videos or not, or if I'm just throwing it out there. Or I mean, a lot of my friends probably took classes from him or whatever, so I can just, playing into the conversation or whatever, is the whole Uranian influence of progression or evolution and all this kind of thing. I've been reflecting on it recently, and one of the things that's come up for me is that if you look at the historical progression, the way that there's the problem about, there's something about the astrology. I'm reading Cosmos and Psyche. I've been reading this book for years, and I'm about to finish it off. I might actually finish Rick Tarnas's Cosmos and Psyche, and there's something about it that's like talking about Uranus having to do with technological influences and scientific advancements, and then putting it together with Neptune and Pluto, and then talking about things that might have happened in different historical periods of time, with different cultural breakthroughs or technological breakthroughs or things like that. But regardless of all, you have to admit, I would say, that there's a certain technological leap that's come across within modernity that does make modernity different specifically from ancient times. And in that sense, the cyclical nature of the planets and all this kind of stuff, there's something about modernity which introduces, first of all, with technology, the outer planets. It also introduces the means of making astrology available to everybody, and the means of enriching the ability to do webinars and stuff like that online, and having the whole infrastructure for these kinds of businesses, and that it's all kind of, there's something about the whole thing about the fish in not knowing the water that it swims in, that it's sort of like that you could be very immersed in this kind of environment and take it to be like this is normal, and it's like, compared to what exactly? And then like there's something to be in a completely abnormal situation but not be able to realize how abnormal the situation you're in, because what do you have to compare it to if you only inhabit such a tiny little part of space-time, the whole space-time continuum or whatever, right? Okay, that's a bit too big, but the human the whole human historical thing that we, I think in some way it's interesting to hearing about ancient people and hearing about maybe how life was not so different than us and all this kind of stuff. But if you look at all the problems that plague our society, everybody's got ADHD, nobody can pay attention to anything, everybody's got PTSD, everybody's addicted, everybody, all these things. And at least to some extent, the whatever happened with nuclear bombs, industrialization, technology, pollution, extinction of global warming. This is not just something that people like the ancient apocalypse with Graham Hancock, right? Well, they'll talk about these floods that happen and these ice ages and floodings and things like that, which may have happened in the past, and that maybe there, but but even he says that he doesn't think that these people have gone to the moon, right? And would these ancient civilizations have had nuclear weapons, or would they have had internet or all this kind of stuff? Regardless of all that, there's something going on that it's like, if you can't just write it off in you can go back. You can go back and look at ancient Greece and look at what Uranus, Neptune, Pluto transits were going, but it's an anachronism because they didn't have the technology to look at it back then, right? So there's something about Uranus, Neptune, Pluto that is distinctively modern, and to even have the conversation about Uranus in the first place is a kind of acknowledgement that's kind of like giving in to be like, oh yeah, Uranus, it's just this thing that's always been there, and it's this, it's just part of this cycle that it's like, yeah, but we didn't even know about this until recently, let alone the actual what we associate with Uranus and Neptune, and to be able to do people do webinar things where they're doing group meditations through their little handheld devices and trying to communicate esoteric spirituality to each other on the internet, and it's and being all oh yeah, this is just normal shit, man, people were just doing this back in the day with it's I don't know, or they show you the hieroglyphs where the pharaoh has his iPad or something, right? And try to say I don't know. Okay, well, because that's kind of weird. To me, it's more weird to play. It's either you spin it that direction and the weird, you get into this weird Gaia channel stuff about ancient whatever flying saucers and stuff like this, which is kind of wacky, or else you acknowledge that hey, wait a minute, we actually have gone through an enormous technological evolutionary change, right? There's something that this thing is where if you take the point, it's funny listening to Adam Ellenboss make the argument against evolutionary astrology because the whole contrarian dialectic things that you're actually maybe I should become you start to you start entertaining the other side of it more, because when you even pose the thing as that dichotomy or whatever, right? But I was doing that in my last video with Mars and Gemini, rather than, because I saw the Gemini, the twins, as being in the air, also the age of air, having more to do with it all than Uranus and Taurus, because I see Uranus and Taurus as being more of an air sign thing, whereas I'm relating this to as more of an air element kind of dynamic rather than Earth. But here we're having a full moon in Leo, and I think certain things that the whole breaking out of traditions, breaking out of whatever, right? I kind of had this resolution that if I was going to come back and do astrology videos, that I'm not going to just do the same old shit anymore, pardon my expression. But part of the reason why, it's not just because of okay, as a Uranus influence to be to progressive, to be not held back or whatever. But if you actually look at the way whatever doing something like this works, where you're making a channel and you're getting sort of feedback or whatever, and if you're if I'm as a guy who's just not as established and I'm trying to get something going, and I'm looking at what I'm doing and I'm saying that for one thing, it's not working in terms of building my channel up, in terms of getting clients, in terms of whatever. And also the main thing too is actually, and the most important thing, which is I think I've heard when I was taking classes with Adam Ellenboss, I remember him talking about this, is that at some point in time you're going to feel astrology is like the last thing you want to do, that you're just sick of it, that you're just tired of it, that there's like, or that if there's any way that you can like have a creative process, you have to look for what's the angle, what excites you, what interests you, what's kind of like where the spark is, right? And what's great about Uranus is that I have to say that Uranus provides a bit of a spark where it's actually kind of exciting, like talking about chasing the carrot at the end of the stick. Because I have to admit, I'm all into like reading about Choyam Trunkvad. He talk about there's no goal, right? And the fact thinking there's a goal or something to achieve is the obstacle. But the whole point though is that what if there's no goal, then if there's no telios, right? If there's no moving towards something, there's no. If it's just okay, they don't have to move towards anything. They don't have to achieve anything. You don't have to do anything. But where am I now? I'm here and I've got a screen and I'm talking and I'm expressing this idea, which is something that I've already started in the past of carrying on this thing that's already rolling. But the point is, like, after I make this video, should I make another one? Should, like, if there's nothing really to achieve out of this. If the thing too is that, like, if I'm comfortable and I don't even necessarily I'm not under that much financial pressure right there to even get clients to be doling out the cash and the money and all this kind of stuff. If I'm just doing this for my own creative expression, then if I'm going to keep doing it, I'm like, actually having a carrot, like the carrot. I mean, there's a lot of carrots that I struggle with. The carrot of self-improvement, the carrot of whatever, the carrot of trying to like progress in society or try to build myself up. Or it's like it's hard for me to but there's certain carrots that the Uranian. If that's a revolutionary, rebellious spirit, it's a carrot. Like, if you need a carrot to make you move, it's a pretty damn good carrot, I would say. Like, what other carrots are you going to be chasing, right? I mean, or you don't chase any carrots. And then, but the thing is, when you don't chase any carrots, then you start all these people nagging at you. Why aren't you chasing any carrots? Why aren't you chasing any carrots? And so it's you can't win. I have to say. I mean, if you want to try just having no carrot, no ideal, no goal, no whatever, and just being and not having a reason to do the things you do every day, then you can try that out and see how. But the whole thing is, like, most of these people, it seems like you have to have a kind of. Why the people will go for this life coach stuff is that people need some kind of like motivation, right? Which is all about moving, right? Which is Byung Chul Han mentions that it's all about moving, going, doing, rather than being, right? And one of the things my meditation teacher would say, Dan, there's doers and there's beers, right? There's some people are out there to do and move and some people just want to be, right? And so I'm not against that part of it, But the point, though, is, I would say, is that I think astrology, I have found, has been helpful as a practice because the creative energy wants to do something. It doesn't want to just whatever. Stuff happens, it just happens. So, and when it's happening, what do you got to work with? You're going to work with planetary influences or not? You're going to pretend, you're going to just like, I don't know. You might as well, I mean, even if you're not working with the planetary influences, they might be influencing you unconsciously. So you might as well try to talk about them. I don't know. The whole, at some point in time, I've just kind of realized that this whole thing about the truth, anyways, I don't know about what specific spiritual tradition is the most kind of authentically true for me to align myself with. But what I'm doing at the moment, involving meditation and tarot and astrology, at least I have the sense that it's like it's within my nature to be doing this kind of stuff, and that it feels like a natural thing to make astrology videos. And I have the stuff though with philosophy though that I don't think I don't know, like, should I just go, like, I don't know what to do with the philosophy stuff really. I mean, the and it would be, if I was just trying to make money off of my astrology channel, the philosophy probably is more of an obstacle than anything else. It's probably more of a detractor from getting, but with the whole thing about anti-capitalism, which is basically just for me reading a bunch of Deleuze and Guattari, and like having to, like, I can't, I'm almost finished the Anti-Oedipus, and I can't devote that much of my mental energy to the Anti-Oedipus without it affecting other things that I do, and without me having to process it in some way. But I've also sort of have, whatever, I don't know. The whole, the whole scene of, yeah, whatever. Should I go to, maybe I'll go to university or something to deal with it. It's a weird scene to get into, but I don't. It's got its hooks in me. Okay, I have to work out the Deleuze and Guattari problem, which relates to Henry Miller, which relates to Anais Nin, which relates to astrology, which relates to Dane Rudhyar, which relates to any number of things. It's all connected, basically. You pull one thread and the whole sweater comes loose, right? And so, this is like, yeah, that's whatever. I don't. Maybe I'll do another video talking about my dad. It's his birthday tomorrow. Rest in peace. Maybe not, but it's the full moon in Leo. Maybe I'll just call this my full moon in Leo video. And thanks for watching, I guess.